Alright, here's our video today. What generates heat in the body? How do we get our heat? And let me write this down. It comes down to one word: metabolism. The heat in the body, our heat, which averages, just the average, we'll say 37 degrees Celsius, not Fahrenheit. And those who are not familiar with Celsius, we know it's 98.6 degrees. And this is the average Fahrenheit. So it's metabolism. So let's write that down. Metabolism. And we might go into the flame. There we go, metabolism. So the body's basic metabolic processes, they include cellular respiration. So I'll write that down. Cellular. And all cellular respiration is just getting energy from food, getting that ATP carrier, adenosine triphosphate, to produce energy. So cellular respiration. So we have metabolism, which includes cellular respiration, digestion, maintaining organ function. All that generates heat. So let's get a clean page here. And here's a picture. So when the body converts food into energy through cellular respiration, the byproduct, you can see over here, the byproduct, heat, right? Heat is a byproduct. And we have ATP that will make energy. ATP is the molecule that stores the energy. And this happens, this activity, this metabolic activity is happening in all the cells in your body. And you have, average person, might have 37 trillion cells. Just think about all that heat generated from all those cells. It could be enormous. If you think about cellular respiration and heat production. Let's look at those numbers. But before that, let's just write this down. Remember, the total amount of heat, produced by the body, almost put those two words together, right, is influenced by what? What do you think? I just said it before. It's influenced by metabolism, by the metabolic rate. And of course, some people will produce more energy, have a higher metabolism than others. But we said before, the average is about 37 degrees Celsius, right? So homeostasis is where the body's regulating this temperature. We need this ideal temperature within that range for enzymes to work and so forth. So 37 degrees Fahrenheit, and of course 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Celsius, 37 degrees Celsius, 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. So, again, the 37 trillion or so, the trillions of cells, right, in the body contribute to heat production. And one of the main is cellular respiration. And then the circulatory system will help distribute that heat generated by the cells throughout the body. And of course, the blood is going to carry that heat also. Because the overall goal is to have a uniform temperature throughout the body. And of course, all that heat produced is also heat loss. The body will lose heat. And of course, like sweating and so forth, the body will lose heat. Just as heat leaves the body also through air movement. So there is a balance between heat production and loss. And we need that balance, because if we kept all that heat inside, it wouldn't be good for us and our enzymes, which break down our food to give us this energy. And here's some terms we should know, like the basal metabolic rate, your BMR. This is where the body's continuously producing heat as it breaks down food. So carbs, fats, proteins, and so forth. Breaking down food to make energy, as we said, through cellular respiration. So that requires energy, and of course heat is produced through your BMR. Muscle activity, physical exercise, and you know this, when you work out, your muscles will contract during physical activities, and then again they're going to consume energy, and of course when you consume energy, you produce heat. And the more intense the activity, what do you think is going to happen? The more heat will be produced. Just remember that the cells over here, we'll write the cells in the BMR. The cells are taking in glucose, right? So the cells convert glucose, the preferred sugar, and oxygen, put O2, oxygen, into energy. Of course, the energy carrier is ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which stores it. And of course, all this will release heat. And then we have muscle contraction. Of course, we'll put contraction will produce heat. Thermogenesis. So we think about this. There is certain tissues in your body that will generate heat by burning calories without muscle contraction. This is important for, especially think about a baby and during cold exposure. So that's what thermogenesis is, producing heat without muscle contraction. We'll say it right here. Producing heat without, so fancy without muscle contraction. So it's burning calories without muscle contraction, without muscle contraction. And then there's hormone regulation. Hormones, let's say the thyroid hormone, for example, they will influence, the thyroid influences metabolic rate and heat production. So an increase in metabolism can lead to an increased heat generation. And of course, digestion, when you're digesting food, heat is produced. So all these will conduct heat in your body. And we also, like I said, the most important thing is we have to make sure that heat is produced and some heat is lost. So if you think about theoretically, if the body produced heat continuously, and it does usually happen continuously, you need heat dissipation. Without and dissipation, I'm talking about heat loss. The temperature could rise significantly. And we'll look at that. So let me write it over here. The human body will generate heat through metabolic processes that I said, muscle activity, digestion, and so forth. The human body typically, we'll put typically, produces about 60 to 100 watts of power. That's the heat of power at rest. So obviously it does increase. And this is per second. So think of a 100-watt light bulb. The heat produced from a 100-watt light bulb, if you go feel that, I think that's what's happening. And of course also there's heat dissipation. So we have heat dissipation. In other words, we have heat loss. And so with that heat loss, the body will maintain that 37 degrees Celsius that we want. Blood flow to the skin, sweating, and other things that I mentioned. And by the way, I don't mean per second. I don't know why I threw in per second there. Let's erase this. Find the eraser here. Not per second, per hour. It's a weird eraser. Per hour. Let's get my pen back. It's somewhere around there. There we go. So we're going to say per hour. So 60 to 100 watts of power at rest per hour. And then we could look at a formula. I'm going to write this formula down. So you're going to see these weird numbers. That's delta T. And delta is just a Greek letter, delta. And it just means change of. So this just means change of temperature. And remember, when we're doing science, it's going to be in Celsius. Right? Not the copyright symbol, but Celsius. So, and then you're going to see another symbol, Q. And Q is heat added. It's going to be the heat added. And I'll explain this. We'll do an example. The heat added. And remember, heat is measured in joules. And we're going to see a little small letter M, lowercase m, and that's the mass. And then you're going to see a little c, and that's the specific heat. I'll explain all this. Specific heat energy. Very simple if you think about it. Certain material, whether solid or fluid or gas, they take a longer time to heat up. For example, water takes a long time to heat up compared to, let's say, sand. And you know this when you're at the beach. If you're walking on the beach on a hot day, the sand is hot, right? You're feeling it on your feet. But when you get to the water, the heat is cold. Well, excuse me, the water is cold. It could be freezing in a sense. To you, you put your foot in and you're shivering of coldness. Because water takes a while to heat up, and that's what the specific heat capacity means. In this case, the heat capacity or the specific heat energy. So I'll just keep that there for a minute. If you can see all the, and I'll explain it again, right? Delta T, the change of temperature. Q is the heat added in joules, and the mass, and C is the specific heat capacity. So let me just write that. Make sure you understand this. Specific heat capacity or heat energy. The higher number you get, the harder it is for that substance, whether it's liquid or solid, to heat up. So if you think of water, water is very hard to heat up. You may know this again, like we said with the beach. So it has its specific heat capacity is 4.18 kilojoules. So in other words, it could absorb a lot of heat before its temperature rises. If you compare it to, let's say copper, because we know metals, their temperature rises very quickly. So copper is 0.385. So copper can heat up much more quickly than water can. So now that we know that, let's look at an example of something. So let's say a person, we'll say a 70 kilogram person. So now we know the mass is 70 kilograms. And let's say that person is producing 100 watts of energy over 1 hour. So we know this. We're going to try to find Q, which is the heat added. How much heat is Q? And the formula, it will be, we're going to do 100 watts times the specific heat of the body, which is roughly about 3.6 kilojoules. Right, and see how it's lower than water. And if you multiplied that, you'll get 360,000 joules. So what do we do with that? So remember, 360,000 joules. We're going to find, so that's Q. And here's the formula. So let's see if green works. Green should work over here. We'll put a box over here so I can show you the formula. the formula would be the change, delta T, the change of temperature, will equal Q over, and Q, by the way, is right there. There's Q. Q over mass times C, and that's the specific heat capacity of the body. So we have everything here. So, and again, 100 watts of power. So we have Q already. So over here, I'm going to say 360,000 divided by, because that's Q, the mass, which is 70, times, and again, the specific heat capacity is 3,500 joules, or 3.5 kilojoules, or 3.6. We'll just say 3,600. And roughly, if we get that answer, what do you think you get? You're going to get roughly somewhere about 15 degrees Celsius. So what this says is that this would be added to the 37 degrees that the body is trying to maintain. So if you think about 37 plus 15, another 15 degrees would be added if you're producing 100 watts per hour. So let's just add it here. We have that's a 12 over there, put the 1, 4, 52 degrees Celsius. 52 degrees Celsius would be the heat in the body, which we would not be able to sustain. Enzymes wouldn't work with that. That's what would happen if we didn't have heat loss. And go back if you need to, if you see how I got this. So again, if you think about 100 watts generated per hour, 100 watts generated per hour, and we have 37 trillion cells. Well, we can estimate how much each cell is generating per hour. We have to just divide, right? We do 100 divided by 37 trillion, which is about, say, 3.7 times 10 to the 13th power, right? Scientific notation. And that will give us a roughly 2.7 times 10 to the negative 12th power. So each cell is producing, we'll say this, each cell, fix that E there, each cell is producing 2.7, and this will be in picowatts. Extremely small amount. But again, we have 37 trillion cells. Now, what we didn't consider is that you have over 40 trillion bacteria in you also producing heat. So we have to add that to it also. But in general, though, we are producing heat through bacteria, through cellular respiration, through digestion, through muscle contraction, and so forth. That produces heat, and we need heat loss, heat dissipation, so we can keep that 37 degrees Celsius in our body. So the main question is metabolism. That's how we create heat in the body.